Happy Thursday and welcome to the WBC Faster Together LinkedIn Live series. We're thrilled to have you today to talk about the WBC, our upcoming annual summit, and some of the targets, issues, and best practices that we want to share with you. The Women Business Collaborative is an unprecedented alliance of over 50 women's business organizations collaborating together to achieve equal position, pay, and power for all businesswomen. It is also an alliance of over thousands of professional women and men, business organizations, public and private companies, accelerating change through collaboration, advocacy, action, and accountability. To do this, to propel women forward, the WBC has united more than 50 organizations, activating our vast network to attain immediate and long-term results in 9 essential action initiatives. The first 3 focus on executive women's leadership in business. These are CEO leadership and sponsorship of women CEOs, women in the C-suite and executive leadership with P&L responsibility, women in the boardroom. Our next 3 action initiatives focus on the underrepresentation of women in specific business areas. They include women entrepreneurs and access to capital, women in capital and finance, and women in technology. And our final 3 action initiatives that cut across all and are critical to equity for women in business include diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender pay parity, and women in the pipeline. Our work then focuses on ensuring more women CEOs in the C-suite and on boards, a demand for gender and pay parity, increasing access to institutional capital and capital for women entrepreneurs, driving more women as controllers of capital allocation, parity for women in underrepresented business sectors, and leveraging learning and development to drive pipeline promotions. Interwoven across every initiative and all that we do is our call for inclusivity, diversity, and equality for all women, including women of color, the LGBTQIA community, and other disenfranchised women. And our movement network is spearheaded by our partners, advisory, and leadership councils. With them and our board and our corporate sponsors, we reach millions of business leaders across the United States and globally. We are committed to diversity, as I mentioned. Our councils and board of directors include more than 30% people of color. And this power of combining the collaborative approach with our women's business movement is already creating momentum and accelerating the pace of change for businesswomen. And that is why we want you to hear more about what we do and who we are and where we are going. So first, come join us for our 3rd annual Women's Business Collaborative Annual Summit in September, entitled Empowering Through Gender Equity and Diversity. This summit will take place September 21st and 22nd. In this summit, we will recognize 2 key groups. 8 CEOs of some of the largest companies of the Fortune and Russell indexes who are leading the change to advance diversity. BlackRock, State Street, Dow, Progressive, Walmart, Siemens, Procter & Gamble, and General Motors. And also trailblazers whose leadership and innovation have created new pathways to change for their communities and beyond. These include the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, Vasunda Brown Duckett of TIAA, Magic Johnson of Magic Johnson Enterprises, Indra Noy, the former CEO of Pepsi, Lily Ledbetter, activist and author, and Joey Ryman, the founder and CEO of Brand New World Studios. In addition, you will hear from our key partners, champions, and sponsors across industries and sectors on how to create equal position, pay, and power for all businesswomen. This includes topics ranging from DE&I, how to build leadership across the technology and healthcare industries, to building the movement. One of our key areas is women in the boardroom. Ana Dutra, who we'll speak with today, chairs this action initiative and is a board member of the WBC. We also work in collaboration with David Chun and Equilar. David is the CEO of Equilar, to publish a monthly report entitled Women Joining Public Boards, where we track and measure the women and the diverse women that are being appointed to the boards of public companies on a monthly basis. So today we are speaking with Ana and David about the progress in building equity and diversity in the boardrooms across the country and the key steps we need to take to ensure diversity across all boardrooms, to ensure that they reflect the composition of our society. Welcome, Ana. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gwen.
Well, I'd love to start with both of you, a bit of why you are part of the WBC and what do you do as a participant in the Women in the Boardroom. David, shall we start with you?
Great, thank you. Thanks again, Gwen. Thanks to others at WBC for this opportunity. It's clearly a very influential organization with your 50 members. You touch so many women leaders all across the country. And a little bit about Equilar, we are a data provider. So we track trends around corporate governance, board composition, executive compensation. And as Gwen mentioned earlier, every month we are tracking which women that are being appointed to boards. And we're a big believer of you manage what you measure. And so in addition to tracking appointments on a regular monthly cadence, we also publish every quarter our gender diversity index. And so we're looking at the composition of women on boards and then the pace of change and taking different views of that. And then the last piece that one additional piece I'd want to highlight is the Equilar Diversity Network. And so part of what we do at Equilar is we have a database of people, over 1 million executives and board members that many companies and search firms and others use to be able to source talent. I don't need to tell this audience there's a supply issue. There are plenty of very strong, well-qualified candidates. And we've built a digital solution to allow individuals who are searching for candidates, literally within several mouse clicks, to be able to source them. And within our product, we have built a consortium of roughly close to 50 different organizations, many who are part of the WBC, to have their members to be able to feature them as companies source talent. So thanks again for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, David. So Ana, you're a board member of the WBC. You're also chairing the Women in the Boardroom Action Initiative. Tell us a little bit about why you're here and what we're doing here in the WBC.
Oh, sure. First of all, it is a pleasure to be here with you and David, sharing this moment and having the opportunity to talk about some of the wonderful things we are doing. My association with WBC starts actually with who I am and what I'm passionate about, what I stand for. As an immigrant, a woman of color, and mother of 3 young, adorable women, 2 of my lifelong passions have been, number one, to promote diversity in every organization or community I was involved with, I worked for, I was a member of. And then second, to mentor, support, and develop women. As I became more senior in my career, it started to become very clear to me that number one, it is our responsibility as more senior women to help propel everybody up the pipeline, and also that we must have women in the boardroom and the senior leaders pipeline in order to accelerate diversity, inclusion, and equity in organizations. That's why when I was invited to chair the board initiative at WBC, it was a no-brainer, right? I am completely aligned with WBC's mission. And I think that with this partnership and coalition amongst all those amazing organizations, we are really changing the conversation in the boardroom one at a time. Finally, when we have a partnership that is as powerful as the one that we have with Equilar on the public company sector and with Bolster on the private company sector, as David said, we can start to get good data to measure and use that as leverage to actually accelerate diversity in the boardroom. And I'm always talking together about the boardroom and the pipeline because I don't think that one exists without another.
Without the other. And I want to ask both of you, David, why is the data so important and making this data transparent, right? So we came in and we've been since October reporting monthly in the Women Joining Public Boards report, with on average women comprising about 44% of board appointments. What's so important about making this data public and transparent?
Yeah, thanks for asking the question. I mean, as you know, that many people have different opinions, and people will have opinions that frankly are incorrect. And I think it's important to have, a starting point, accurate statistics. It's based on publicly available information. I'd like to say we have a fair amount of credibility, given our work with the institutional investor community, groups like BlackRock, Fidelity, Vanguard, and others, with the media, and being somewhat neutral in the situation, as opposed to having potentially a social agenda on this. Like, hey, here's the data, here's how we're measuring, and as mentioned before, by having statistics, you can then have goals to be able to shoot for, unless you have an accurate starting point on how to get there. And one thing I did want to add, Anna, as she was talking, I'm an immigrant. I am, person of color. Though I am not a woman, my wife and my daughter are both Wellesley graduates, so feel very strongly about ways to support women. So, thank you.
As a Smith graduate, I will commend the Seven Sisters College. And I know you and I talk a lot about data, and also data on diversity, and being really crisp and clear, but paying attention to exactly what that means. So I want to bring you in, and you mentioned it on this data piece and the importance of that and making that public and transparent.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, Gwen and David, more than anybody else, know what a stickler I can be for accuracy of data, and are we portraying it right? But I'll start by arguing that board diversity has to be, number one, intentional, measurable, and consistent as well, right? So we must ensure that we expand the candidate pool so that we're not only recruiting and rotating the same group of women throughout corporate boards. So, and you're going to see why I'm getting to this point. A few months ago, we started to partner with Equilar to produce a monthly report that tells the story of how new seats in board companies, public companies in particular, are being filled. We not only look at gender split, and I'm excited to report that consistently over the last 5 months, we've seen women occupying 40% plus of all the new board seats in public companies. But we also peeled the onion one more layer and look at diversity within the women segment. For example, African Americans, Latinas, Asians, and we know we have a lot of work to do, especially because some of that data is self-reported, and that starts with women of color, right? There's a lot of work to be done, a lot of progress to be made there. Last but not least, we're also tracking first board appointments, and we're glad to report that we're slowly but surely making progress in the new director segment as well. We want to know, are we just rotating the same women, or are we actually moving the pipeline and putting women who are directors for the first time in new board seats? The reason why we always want to make this data public, the reasons are twofold. Number one, we want to inspire aspiring directors by portraying success stories and role models, right? So that people don't think, well, this is not achievable, or it's not for me. We also want to raise awareness for board directors, recruiters, institutional investors, proxy advisory firms, shareholders, and regulators regarding which corporations are leading the charter on board diversity and which ones are lagging behind in promoting diversity in the boardroom. That creates a very healthy peer pressure. And finally, hopefully by accelerating the model boards and exposing them and celebrating them will motivate the laggards to be more intentional, consistent, and measurable in their efforts. So that's why we're constantly measuring and constantly publicizing the data, right, David?
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. And Anna brought up a couple of really good points in terms of pace of change. When we launched the Gender Diversity Index back at the end of 2017, the ratio of male to female with board appointments was 4-to-1, so it was roughly about 20%. Then we did a couple things. Across the Russell 3000, only about 15% of the board seats were women, so 85% male. And at that pace of change, we weren't going to reach gender parity until 2055. And so needless to say, that got people's attention. And so there's been quite a bit that's happened over the last 4 years. And as Ana pointed out, the pace of change has significantly accelerated, and that the parity bar comes, went from 2055 to about 2030, 2035, somewhere around, so early 2030s. So I can't stress enough, having to be able to look at this and to be able to celebrate the appointments. I mean, so one of the things you'll see us on LinkedIn as members of our diversity network get appointed to boards, we're posting that. We want people to know, like, hey, this is progress, and we want people to recognize this and to be able to, find other candidates this way to help promote that. So
that's fantastic, and you're giving me hope, both of you too, that the WBC target is to be 30% of board seats on the Fortune, S&P, and Russell by 2025. So I think that's
totally doable.
Oh, very much so.
Totally doable. So we've talked a lot about the data and the transparency of it, and you mentioned, the importance to corporate governance. I want to ask each of you, and I want to start with you. What is something you wish more people knew about having diversity in the workplace? What is the click that needs to happen, or what piece of research or data or something you think not everybody knows? Because I think that's really helpful as to the why it's important and what we're aiming for.
Well, there is.
Go ahead, Ana.
Go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Well, there is actually quite a bit of research out there, right, that shows that diversity, and then I would say it's not just diversity, it's diversity with real inclusion and equity, breeds high performance, innovation, and engagement, right? The numerous studies out there that shows that companies with a higher percentage of women, for example, in leadership roles, deliver superior results and higher performance. I do believe also that it's very inspiring to see people like us at the top. I never took a job where I didn't see any female in leadership positions, right? Because that's very telling about the company, unless I was willing and aware that I would have to be a pioneer for that company. But when we see more women CEOs, more female board directors, that just increases hope, excitement, and possibilities. I think people see possibilities. People will work harder and we work smarter when they're motivated by this. And I think that the engagement created, quite frankly, is not just limited to employees. It's kind of contagious and positively impacts then your suppliers. They want to do better, your partners, and then ultimately their investors. So there's a whole cycle there. What have you seen, David?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think there's, at the end of the day, this is not a social mission issue. It's a business returns issue. And if you talk to, the BlackRocks of the world and the State Streets, the Vanguards and others who have voting policies around diversity, they recognize that greater diversity leads to better outcomes. And why is that? By having, Ana talks about her background, immigrant coming from South America, myself, growing up immigrant, coming from the Asian world, we see the world very differently, and for better or for worse, right? We've had different experiences. And then when we're approaching a problem, we will have different unique perspectives to be able to share. And ultimately, by having less blind spots, will ultimately lead to better outcomes. And so, but as Ana pointed out, I mean, I'm going to give full credit to Michelle Edkins on this at BlackRock, who heads up the investment stewardship team there. One of the issues, diversity, what specifically is diversity? How does one define diversity, and what's that comprised of? There's cognitive diversity, right? The decision-making, the experiences, but the important piece, equally as important, is visible diversity. And as Ana pointed out, people, when they're looking at the leadership of that company, whether it's a potential partner, whether it's somebody that's potentially applying for that job, if they don't see women and people of color in the leadership ranks, it's like, well, what are my chances of being able to break into that group later in the career? And when they see companies where they see that, they feel much more attracted to those types of businesses. So, I mean, those are important things to keep in mind around the business outcomes of investing in diversity.
And I do have a question for David. I know that when I moved to this country almost 30 years ago, if somebody told me you're going to be the CEO of a US organization, and then I can see in your future, you're going to serve on public company boards, I would say, no way. I just want to finish my MBA and I want a job and a career. And that's it. It was not in my view, it was not even in the cards. It was so distant. But then you start to see the others achieve that, and it just becomes a possibility. Did you have that? Did you go through that process as well?
Well, I came as a baby, and funny enough, we're doing Equilar. We did this little photo album that's going to be released later today, and so it's going through some old photos. And so there's a photo of me and my mom when we left Korea, because my dad was already here to study, get his graduate degree. And when we left Korea in the 60s, right? I mean, Korea is one of the poorest countries in the world. And if if you said what you and I would be on a call to talk about corporate boards with all this amazing audience on LinkedIn and all this type of stuff, I'd be like, you're talking to the wrong person here, right? And so, I mean, this is a great country, and I can't say enough. So thankful for the opportunities, and just honored to be part of this discussion, to be able to share the work that we're doing with everyone.
Well, we are so honored. I'm so honored to be, every time I get on with the two of you, talking about what we're doing in this space, from all the angles of transparency to data to corporate governance, I get more inspired and excited. We're so honored to have you as partners and board members and advisors in the WBC. Thank you. As we heard, diversity and gender parity on boards increases the performance of the company. As David said, this isn't a social mandate, this is a business mandate. But we want to hear more from Ana and David and more of our amazing WBC stakeholders at the summit. And so please register for our summit. You can find all the information on our website, which is WBC Collaborative, under our events tab. We can't wait to see you there. We also have a registration link on Hopin, which we're putting in the chat here. And join us, join the WBC, join us to talk about these important issues, to hear from amazing leaders about the importance of creating what the leadership of the business community looks like today and tomorrow. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us. Our next show will be next week. Invite your followers and friends to join us. And remember to register for the summit, join the WBC, and keep up to date on the progress of the movement and where we're going to be by 2025. And finally, you can follow us on social media at WBC Collaborative on both Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you, and have a great Thursday.
Thank you.